Yo, what's going on YouTube, and welcome to my video. Today I'm going to be covering the Vortex rankings for the relaunch of Dragonheir Silent God Season 1. I've been able to test this here on the test server client for about a couple days. I've tested pretty extensively and I've come up with some really good results. And this has all been tested here on Vortex 3. Unfortunately, we don't have access to Vortex 4. And it's also been tested with the second to last tier only on the Psyche core because, again, I didn't have enough points to invest into this last tier. So the rankings could slightly change based on these buffs, as well as your survivability is probably going to be worse overall on Vortex 4 because it does more damage. So just keep that in mind. But I'm pretty confident that at least for Vortex 3, these will be the rankings, and they probably won't change that much on Vortex 4, assuming you can get gear upgrades and stuff to get similar results. So let's go over the TLDR first to save you guys some time if that's all you're here for. The rank 1 team, by a large margin here, is of course Wild, same as it was in the original Season 1, and she is able to do here 780 million with her exclusive artifact and 550 without it, with the next best artifact. Dauntless coming in second, 533 with the artifact and 362 without it. Poison in third, 314, 255. Summons, interestingly enough, do the same damage with the exclusive artifact as well as a setup with this Demon Skull. Did pretty much the same exact damage, so maybe you don't really need to invest in getting her exclusive artifact. And then finally Rally in last, not really even worth making this team, to be honest, if you're going to try to do well on Vortex. And then finally Frost would have been even below this, so I didn't even bother. Frost is really not meant for Vortex, they're more for Arena and stuff. So yeah, these are the rankings. Hope that saves you guys some time, but I will be going over everything in detail with the teams, new gear, talents, timings, why I chose the composition I did, and everything like that. And yeah, that'll be coming next. All right, real quick before I get further into the video, I just want to let you guys know, if you guys want to support me as a Dragonheir content creator, something that would help me greatly is if you guys come over here and bind to an invitation code, and this will not only benefit me, but you'll also get some rewards for yourself in game. And the way you do this is you take this, and if it doesn't work for you on Firefox, I've been able to get it to work on Chrome. And on Chrome, it shouldn't show a black screen, so we're going to come to this image here, and you just type in hype sudo, and then click link invitation code and log into your account, and you'll be linked to me and you'll get these rewards in the mail. All right, so starting off, we're going to go over the best team first. That's what a lot of you guys are here for, and that is going to be the Wild team. I just want to let you guys know that I've been, able to get some information from the Chinese who have already been through Season 1, and so they've basically done all the testing and fine-tuning ahead of time for us. And by copying some of the things that they've been doing, I've been able to get much better results. So over there, the meta was pretty much solidified as being a 4 DPS, 1 support meta being superior to a 3 DPS and 2 support meta. And it seems like the goal is kind of to be doing a lot of damage within less time than doing little damage in a lot of time. So it's more of a race, not a marathon. A lot of these team compositions like Wild and Dauntless, they have like this exponential damage scaling factor when you add more DPS, because they all synergize with each other and they all increase the damage of the main damage dealer, here being the exclusive. And so if you can get a singular support to keep the team alive for as long as possible, you'll end up getting substantially more damage. I tested 2 support setups, and although we survived, I mean, we pretty much survived the same amount of time. We survived the full 10 minutes, but our damage was much, much worse. So just keep that in mind. You want to go for the 4 DPS setup to maximize your damage. And thankfully here on the Wild team, the Giga Chad, who's carrying the team by himself, is only in Epic, and a lot of people are going to have access to him. In fact, I think he's free. You get him on like the Walker's Trial or something. So everyone should have him. Now the big important thing though is the artifact he is using is mandatory. I have tested with this artifact, the old Enlightenment artifact from back in the day that gave an additional shield duration, and I've also tested with another artifact that has been pretty popular on him in the past with the Tiara. Neither of these artifacts held a candle to the Aurelian Vest. We would die like 2 to 3 minutes earlier than the Aurelian Vest, which kept us alive the entire 10 minutes. So this is kind of mandatory. This thing is extremely broken on him especially, and helps you stay alive. So this is needed, but with Adolphus and the right gear and Aurelian Vest, you can keep a team alive for the full 10 minutes and get away with 4 DPS. So the composition is going to be Flora, of course, as our main damage dealer, and then coming in second is Casper. He does a lot lesser than Flora, but he's still way ahead of both Felicity and Erich, so we still want to be using him. But the main reason we're using him is not really his damage, it's that he provides a lot of extra hits for Flora, who is of course benefiting from those hits to deal a lot more damage. So he is providing a lot here. It's hard to replace him. If you were to use someone like Tononon, you would lose a lot of damage, not just because Tononon does less damage than Casper, but also because you get less overall hits, and that makes Flora also do worse. So this is pretty much the top 2 units you want to have. And then the supports, honestly, are also pretty much irreplaceable. Felicity is providing defense penalty as well as a lot of hits. And then Erich is providing an additional 2 to the maximum roll value on your dice, which is a lot more damage overall, as well as a decent amount of hits. I suppose you could try and replace him with Tononon, and that might be the most replaceable spot. But I think if you have all 4 of these, you're definitely going to want to use all 4 of these. And then, of course, Adolphus, like I said. So going over, I guess I'll go over the timings first. So the idea here, and this is something I've been doing with pretty much all the teams, and this is like a kind of, I guess, like a good practice that you want to follow, is you're going to want to have at least one puppeteer set on pretty much every Vortex team you make, because this is going to allow you to turn boost your team. Anyone who's of the same element as the user of this set is going to turn boost the rest of the team by 10% of their ultimate energy, and this can have effect every 15 seconds. What that means is a normal team that has a 20-second rotation is now going to be able to ult on an 18-second rotation. So that is technically, I mean, if you just take the 10% ultimate energy, that would be 10% more damage. But in reality, because ults are where a lot of the damage of most characters is, this ends up being a lot more than just 10% more damage. It ends up being more like 15 or 20% more damage. And then if you take into account sets like the Platinum Knight, which gives you a 12-second buff, that gives you 30% increased damage, well, 12 seconds every 18 seconds is a lot more uptime than 12 seconds every 20 seconds. So basically, this is a good practice. Put this puppeteer set on one of your supportive, enabler DPS that isn't as important to do a lot of damage, and then you'll just buff the rest of the team and make them all perform a lot better. So all my teams have been timed according to that set. So as you can see here, we are timing her to go pretty much immediately at 12 seconds. I guess you can go earlier. I guess I might have some skill haste or something, but everyone else is at about 12 seconds. So we have her go at 12 seconds every 18 seconds, followed by Felicity right after. She's going to be applying a defense penalty as well as the Witch's Remains artifact for more defense penalty. Those can stack. You get a lot of defense penetration with her. And she's going right after Flora, but we are leaving her on default for the recast. She's going to be able to turn boost herself with her passive, and so we don't want to slow her down. We just want to let her ult as many times as she can to get as much uptime on that defense penalty as possible throughout the fight. Then Erich, I have him starting out at 15.1, just because at least within the first round, the defense penalty here from Felicity takes a few seconds to apply, and so we want to let him hit the boss when it's fully stacked. And it really doesn't matter how you time him, as long as he's within Flora's ultimate, he will be doing the best. But we do need him to go last, and the reason for that is because, like I said, he is using the puppeteer set. And the way that this set works is it buffs your ultimate energy by 10%. So you have to be at least 10% before or after your team to be able to benefit from that. So if you go after your team, you'll boost all of them. But if you go before and then your teammates are already, fully charged on their ultimate, well, they're not going to gain any ultimate energy because they already are fully charged. So basically, the best way to time this is you either go 2 seconds before the rest of the team, or you have to have this puppeteer user go last. And so in this case, we're having him go last. And then he goes again every 18 seconds. And then finally, Casper, we want his ult to be up pretty much active during the entire ult of Flora. So we have him just 0.1 seconds after her, so that their ults are both up during the same time window. And he's also going every 8 seconds. Now for Adolphus, because the talents as well as his battle skill allow him to turn boost, we're actually just leaving him on auto. That has been the best results for me. You do not want to slow him down. Let him do his thing. He's going to be shielding and healing and carrying your ass. So you're just going to let him do his thing and leave him on default. But yeah, moving on to the next person. I guess we'll go over the gearing next. So basically with Flora, the priority here is as much enlightenment as you can possibly get. This set is very good on her, although the meta will eventually eventually shift over to just stacking mythics once you get good mythics. But keep in mind, if you're using mythics that have bad stats, they're probably still going to be worse than just using really good legendary gear. So only use mythics if the stats make sense and they are good. Otherwise, these legendary pieces are going to outperform them. So you want to have at least the main stats here, enlightenment being the most important thing on her. So enlightenment body armor, enlightenment positive rune, and then on all the other pieces we are basically looking for as much enlightenment and attack as possible. Do not worry about crit. She does only derivative damage, which cannot crit, so crit is worthless on her. You just want to stack enlightenment and attack. That's it. That's basically the most straightforward way to build her. 300, 400, you know, however much enlightenment you can get, and a bunch of attack. Moving on, Felicity. So because she's turn boosting herself and she's ulting quite often, maybe every 14 seconds or so, she is probably going to be best here in the 3 ears set. This is going to buff us for 15% more damage for 10 seconds. And like I said, since she's ulting so much, this will have pretty good uptime. And we don't really care about her damage. She's there more to provide the defense penalty and a lot of hits for Flora. Now, if you want her to go very often, you're going to need to get her crit up. As you can see here, I've got close to 100% crit, and that is because the only way she can turn boost is by critting on her skills. Ideally, you want to get 100% crit on her so that you can get her to go the fastest. And on an ideal setup, you would also want to have skill haste where you can get it on the runes. The faster she goes, the more damage you're going to deal. So just keep that in mind. I didn't have any skill haste runes here on the test server, but if you can get like 40 skill haste on top of this kind of gear, then that would be optimal. So of course you're going to be going crit gloves, and then the rest is just attack percentage, crit damage, and of course accuracy. You need enough accuracy to apply the Witch's Remains, so we're using a negative rune here with accuracy, and a fully leveled Witch's Remains giving us another like 96. The goal here going to be probably around 280 on Vortex 4. I only have 222 here on Vortex 3, but that's all I need. So you might need more once you get to Vortex 4. But yeah, that is how you're going to build her. Moving on to Erich. As I said, he's turn boosting us, and we're going to build him slightly different than you would normally build a crit damage dealer. We're going to only invest in attack. We do not care about crit. His damage is not that significant anyway, so we're preferring here to stack attack and use that attack with the Dawn Pipe Organ to basically increase the damage that both Flora and Casper do, since they do the majority of the damage. So he will give 10% of his attack to Flora and Casper. So we're going just attack percentage on every piece as much as we can get, and using double attack percentage gloves and body armor. And then for runes, also both going attack if we can. And then moving on to Adolphus, probably the most important one for survivability here. You want to be using this Aurelian Vest. This is extremely overpowered. I think this item was designed in the original Season 1 when you can only have one shield at a time and they do not stack. So this was at most 17.5% damage reduction at any given time when you had shields. Whereas now, with the new season, they've changed the shield mechanics so that you can stack shields. And I've seen evidence of at least 2 shields being able to be stacked. And I think there might be more below there. You maybe can stack 3, 4. I have no idea how many you can stack. I think the limit is probably 2, but they might be able to stack more. It's hard to say. It's hard to tell. But even with just 2 shields stacked together, I think this damage reduction here is applying to each shield. That is the only explanation I have for why this artifact does so well. So I think you can get like 30% or over 30% damage, 35% damage reduction when you have 2 stacked shields together. So extremely powerful, and this synergizes really well with him because he's not only giving shields on the ult, but also on the battle skill, and he's got these talents here that do shields as well. So you're going to have 2 shields a lot of the time, and majority of the time at least 1. So you're getting a lot of extra damage reduction. Now to pair with that damage reduction from the artifact, we're also going to use the Ancestral Protection set, which is going to give us even more damage reduction. Basically, the tank here who has this set on is going to take 15% of the damage of the allies, so he'll be keeping your squishy wild units alive, and then he also gets an extra 10% damage reduction, which is important for when he's taking the Call of Lightning hit, which is that single target hit. That's going to make that do less damage to him. And then the main thing here is to focus on enlightenment, defense. I've seen Chinese players using attack percentage to scale the shields even higher, but I think that maybe is not necessarily the most optimal when you're first starting out. Maybe once you have really insane gear, you can get away with it. But for now, since we're using him as the main tank, I think enlightenment and defense are the priority. And we're using this mythic, which is going to allow him to cleanse debuffs when he uses his shields. So this is going to allow you to get rid of the defense penalty that the boss is applying to you, and that will make you take way less damage overall. So very important to have this. This is pretty much mandatory if you want to do well. And then of course here with the runes, same thing, enlightenment, defense. We just want him to have a lot of defense. Like I have like over 3k defense and a lot of enlightenment. I could do better. 240 is not a lot. You could probably get like closer to 300, but yeah, this was all I needed here on the test server to keep the team alive for 10 minutes. Then moving on to Casper, our last damage dealer here, and he's like second behind Flora, and we're using the Ring of the Scarlet Sorcerer. In theory, the Flame Tongue should be better, but in all my testing, for some reason, this always outperformed it. I think it might be like one of the two artifacts might be bugged, or they don't do exactly what they say here in the description. Because this artifact, it should be only giving you 30% more damage when you roll a greater than a 5, so it's a conditional 30% more damage, whereas the other artifact, the Flame Tongue, you can have 5 stacks of like 7% more damage, and that should be like either at 4 to 5 stacks the entire fight, giving you like 30 to 35% more damage the entire fight. And so I'd assume without the conditional effect that this artifact has, that one should have been better, but in practice this one was better for some reason. So I don't know why, but yeah, Ring of the Scarlet Sorcerer got me the best results. And because this is a crit damage artifact, we're going to need crit rate gloves. Whereas if you were to use the Flame Tongue, which is a crit rate artifact, you would then just swap to crit damage gloves, right? And to get enough crit here on him, I use the crit set. I think this set is very good because this 16% damage is a multiplier that happens on the hit of the attack. So it's after all the other calculations that are increasing his damage have already happened. It is the last thing happening. So I think it has a bigger multiplying effect than stuff like the Gambler, for example. I've tested the Gambler set on people who it should be really good on, like Naschenka, and it didn't do very well because it's just giving you flat damage, whereas this is a multiplier to all your damage if you're critting. So multipliers end up being better. And that is also why mythics and stacking mythics have been the like go-to meta in China for getting the most damage out of your damage dealers, because each additional mythic that gives you, let's say, 16% more damage is a multiplier. So basically you're starting with 100% of your damage, then you have 116, and then you're multiplying that 116% damage by another 16%, and then by another 16 and another 16, and you know, if you got 4 mythic artifacts together, you end up multiplying your damage to like 180%, instead of just getting the flat additional 64% that you would have expected. So it isn't, the additional damage here from mythics, I don't think it's additive, I think it's multiplicative, and that is why it is so powerful. So same thing here with the set bonus, it's a multiplicative damage multiplier, so it's very, very strong. Plus getting the crits here from the set bonus helps us get to that 100% crit mark we want to be at. So yeah, for him, just focus on attack percentage, crit rate, crit damage. He's pretty much a very straightforward damage dealer. Nothing special going on here. And yeah, we're going crit damage rune, attack rune, you know, attack percentage, body armor, and crit rate gloves with the crit set. Eventually, you're going to replace all of this with mythics. Like I said, same thing with Flora. But for now, this is what got me the best results. So that's the gear, and I've already went over the timings. Now let me go over the talents. So the talents here, I guess I'm going to use this team here and I'll show you. I go to upgrade here. So the talents here for Flora, we are going right down the middle. This final talent is her special talent, and this is going to make you do the most damage, so you want to make sure you get this right away. This is going to make a huge difference. Felicity, because she can roll up to an 8, she can, when she rolls a 5, greater than a 5 on her dice roll, she can shoot up to 8 additional shots. So instead of 5, you'll get 8 shots. That is a lot more hits, so we want her to be doing that as much as possible. Also, for each hit, she's going to be applying an additional stack of defense penalty. So to get her to do 8 hits as much as possible, we're going on the bottom side. And this is going to give her +1 to her dice roll to give us more consistency on getting those 8 hits. So that's why we're using the bottom. Casper here, we're going middle. This last point here on the middle, which has a chance of dealing an additional damage when you are ulting. This 25% chance is basically an additional hit. So 25% of the time when you're doing damage to the ultimate, you'll have an additional hit. That additional hit will contribute to Flora doing a lot more damage with her ultimate. And so this is kind of an RNG thing, but it ends up, you know, being really, really powerful, and is the way that you can get, you know, sometimes like 40 or 45 or 50 even hits on the Vortex boss. And then moving on to Erich, we're doing the exact same thing. We want to get as many hits as possible. Keep in mind that I've seen a lot of the Chinese players using the bottom one because he also has this mechanic where if he rolls a higher number, if he rolls a 5, he does an additional hit on his ult. But I prefer the higher RNG version of going middle because when that 25% chance procs, he's going to be doing 10 hits on the ult versus the usual 5 to 6. So I think this is better, and in my testing, it always performed better. So I like to go middle here on Erich. Dauntless here is going top side. These are the talents that give us the additional shields, like I said, that are stacking the damage reduction with the Aurelian Vest, as well as you get some extra cleansing here, which can help with the defense penalty. And yeah, those are the talents for the team. Flora and Casper and Erich all middle, and then Felicity bottom and Adolphus top. And this team goes for about 740 to 780 million. That's about the range that I was getting, with 780 being my best. Of course, with Wild, there's a lot of variance. Their new mechanic is basically as you roll dice, this number builds up over here. And once this reaches a 100, all your dice rolls during that window will be their maximum value. So basically, a lot of the RNG relies on your ults aligning with this being at 100, and you'll do a significantly larger amount of damage. That's part of the RNG. The other RNG is just them rolling a 5 or higher in general to proc their extra effects. So Wild has a lot of RNG. If you want to do well with this team, I would recommend using all of your combat simulations every day to kind of fish for the best results, and not just, doing one. You want to do all 10 because there's a huge amount of variance between your worst and your best scores. And then for the 550 million variant, all I did was I swapped her mythic or her exclusive artifact for Queen's Fan, and that was basically all I did to get the non-exclusive artifact version of the damage. Moving on to Dauntless. I know that's a lot, but now we'll get into Dauntless. All right, for the sake of brevity, I'm going to try and speed things up a bit as we go through these next few teams. So for Dauntless, I'm going to try and speed run this as best I can to save you guys some time. Basically, you are going to want, a close to 100% crit. She gets some extra crit from her passive, so you don't need 100%. She gets about 7.5% extra crit from her own attack speed buffs from the Stork Feather. But also Avelios will be applying an attack speed buff to the entire team, which is another 7.5% crit. So if you want to be optimal and not overcap, you want to go for about 85% crit in total. But more is better just because that Avelios buff isn't always up. So I would say if you want to get the max value out of her, go for like 92.5% crit rate. And then we're just looking for as much crit damage as possible. And she's just a very straightforward, attack, crit, and crit damage DPS. But we are using, here on the Dauntless team, we are using this mythic here for sustain. This is lifesteal based on your basic attacks, and since Dauntless do all their damage with basic attacks, this allows you to survive a lot longer in the fight and not need as much healing, which is kind of a struggle here with only one support. So very important to put pretty much on all your damage dealers here on the Dauntless team to survive longer. And of course, we've got our, exclusive artifact. Moving on to Avelios, we're gearing him with pretty much the same gear we had on Flora, just trying to get a lot of enlightenment and attack. We don't care about crit rate or crit damage at all because they do not do really anything for him. His damage is all derivative. Moving on to Avelios. Interestingly enough, the Silver Star Horseshoe performed the best out of all the artifacts I tested. I think it's because this attack speed buff, again, is happening post-conversion of all your other attack speed increases from gear and, talents and stuff. So it's a multiplier happening at the end, whereas stuff like the Wine of the Dragon Blood is adding to your base stats, which is like adding to the baseline of your attack speed, whereas the buff from the Horseshoe is, like I said, it's happening at the end of the math equation. So it ends up doing better, giving you more attack speed overall. So this ended up being a lot better than the Wine of the Dragon Blood for some reason. So very important to use this. And it even outperformed stuff like the Thunder Deity Spear and the other one, where is it? There's too many artifacts here on the test server. the Great River Lamp. So yeah, his damage is not that important. We just want him to be doing a lot of attacks for Nastjenka and Avelios, and so getting this extra attack speed ended up being the best. And again, we're going to be using this Puppeteer set on him. He's going to be our turn booster and we're going to try and get as close to 100% crit as possible. My gear is not very great here on the test server, but more is better simply because he will shoot extra arrows out of his ultimate if he has higher crit. It's based on his crit, so you want his crit as close to 100% as possible. So look for that. And then of course, because we're going to have a lot of crit, I went crit damage rune and attack negative rune. Moving on to Sutha. Sutha is going to be both our tank and our defense down applier. So she's using the Witch's Remains. She's using this 3 ear set so that she's buffing up our damage as she's applying the Witch's Remains. That's a good thing to use at the same time as the defense penalty to kind of buff our following damage, because that also lasts for 10 seconds. And again, we're using another lifesteal mythic here to stay alive. It's really important to have this on your tank so that she doesn't die. And the difference here between the other DPS is we are actually building her full tank. And what I mean by that is we're trying to get to 70% crit for her ult and her battle skill to always do the double hits. But beyond that, everything is going into defense and accuracy. As long as we have enough accuracy to apply the Witch's Remains, we want to basically after that get only defense. So get as much defense as you can. I only have about 2.7k here. You want to ideally get like 3k if you can. Each increase in defense here is going to make you survive like another round. So if I get her defense up to like, I don't know, 3.2k, I'd probably survive like another round or two, which would be more damage overall. So very important to stack defense because she is going to be your tank. She's going to be tanking the Call of Lightning and on this team. And it's okay for that to happen because, like I said, with this lifesteal mythic, she'll basically be able to heal herself back to full immediately after she gets hit. So this is very OP at healing for these Dauntless units. Moving on to Nathaniel. Nathaniel's the carry that's kind of, trying his best to keep us alive. He doesn't do as well as Adolphus, can't keep us alive the full 10 minutes, but he still performs better than all the other supports that I tested. And partially that is because he has 100% uptime on this Solar King's Horn here, which is increasing our damage a whole lot. And he, I guess, just keeps us alive a little bit longer. Even though I tried Acilia, I tried Jillian, a bunch of other supports, he does the best in the end. So we're using pretty much similar gear to Adolphus, going for one of these mythics that allows him to cleanse with his shields, and then as much enlightenment and whatnot as possible on him with defense gloves and enlightenment again. And then I have an accuracy rune here only because I needed his HP to be lower than Sutha's, but if you can use like a defense rune here that doesn't have any HP on it, that would be best. So yeah, just defense and enlightenment are his main stats to prioritize. And the timings are pretty straightforward. We have Thorvald going 2 seconds before everyone because, like I said, he's turn boosting us. And then 2 seconds later, we have Nastyenka goes first. She wants to put her ult, activate her ult so that following attacks will trigger her arrows. And then right away after her, we're going with Sutha to apply the defense penalty. And then after that defense penalty has been applied, then we finally go with our last DPS here with Avelios at 14.2. And they're all on that 18-second interval to get more damage. The only person we're timing at 20 seconds here is Nathaniel so that he can put up the defense up and the shields during the most important time, which is those first 3 attacks. And so he'll be able to cover all 3 of those with that. And it's the timing for that is 21.5 every 20 seconds. So that's how we're timing him. And then finally, I'll go over the talents. So the talents for this team, again, on the exclusive, we are going for the special talent that she's got down here at the bottom. That seemed to do the best for me. I've seen evidence of people on the Chinese servers using the top one, which basically it's like it's infinite damage scaling, but it takes a long time to ramp up. And that in practice didn't work as well for me. Maybe if you could survive the full 10 minutes, then this would end up being better than the bottom one, just because by the end of the fight you do significantly more damage. But for me, it just took too long to ramp it up, and so it was better to just do more damage out the gate with the special talent down here at the bottom. So this ended up performing the best for me, but I think this is probably a viable option if, like I said, you can survive the full 10 minutes. Then this might end up, surpassing this special talent down here. Now for Sutha, what was interesting is for some reason our damage was significantly better with the middle, even though we don't really need this extra lifesteal when we're using that mythic. For some reason it was a lot better to go middle on her. I think it has something to do with these talents here counting as attacks or something, and that helps Avelios and Nastyenka do more damage. I'm not sure, but yeah, middle was the best. For Avelios, top side was the best because he gets extra attack. and he also gets extra damage whenever he deals damage, and he does damage really quickly. And I've tested the other ones, but yeah, this was just the best for some reason. Always go top with him. This is 10% more attack here, and then another, if you have your buffs up, there's another 12% more attack. So you get a lot of extra attack from this top side. And then finally, Thorvald, if I had him at 100% crit already, I would consider using the middle one, just like I did on Sutha to get more hits. But because we only have him here on the test server at about, I don't know, like 74% crit, I'm using the top side because this is going to ramp up his crit to eventually be at 100%, where he'll gain the maximum benefit from his ultimate. So top side did really well for me on him. And then finally, Nathaniel, he is much better with middle than any of the other two. This gives you damage reduction as well as additional healing, and it heals you for more when you're low, which is when you actually really need it. So it is probably just the best to go in the middle. And this damage reduction has good uptime because his battle skill is healing so often. So yeah, middle performed the best for me with him. And this team doesn't survive the full 10 minutes. It dies with like a minute and 30 seconds left roughly. But in that time, it really pumps, and it does, as you see here, it does the 500 and what was it, 520 something. Wait, hold on, go to manage. 533 million. And then without the artifact, basically what I did was I swapped out this for the lamp. And because the lamp is a crit damage artifact, I had to swap her gloves over to crit rate. And that is how I tested the other artifact. So yeah, the non-exclusive artifact is going to be worse, but that's her best option still, is the lamp if you don't have the exclusive. Moving on. All right, so moving on to poison, we've got a Lothair team here using pretty much the exact same setup on Adolphus as we had for the wild team, using the Aurelian Vest, stacking enlightenment and defense, and using this mythic so that we can cleanse when we shield. We've got our poison applier here being Twitch. And actually, the Rhapsodist set here increases damage quite significantly because this will be fully stacked at 32% more damage the entire fight. So very good on him to use this. And he actually does quite a lot of damage because his poisons are getting extended by Corrin. So we're going to have 40 of his poisons up on the boss pretty much the whole fight, and that's going to add up to a lot of damage. So because the poisons are where most of the damage is going to be coming from, we're of course going to focus on getting a lot of enlightenment and attack, not so much on crit or crit damage, although those aren't completely terrible on him. I prefer to go for a bunch of attack here to get more damage out of the poisons. If you can get crit as well, that's of course, you know, going to be nice. But I think I didn't have any crit rate gloves anyway for this vampire set here on the test server, so I had to use attack. It's worth trying if you can. But the reason why we're using the vampire set here, just like the Dauntless team, is again, this team unfortunately doesn't survive as well as the wild team. I think it's because the turn boosting set here is on a poison, so it's not going to be turn boosting Adolphus to gain extra ultimate energy since he's fire, and that means that he gets less shields up less often, and so we end up dying a little early if I don't use this. So the vampire gloves here, or like the body armor, helped us survive the full 10 minutes so I could get, you know, the optimal damage. So yeah, want to use those if you can. And we're basically, yeah, like I said, just stacking attack and enlightenment and getting enough accuracy so that he can apply the poisons and this Witch's Remains artifact. Lothair, build him pretty much the same as Flora, except like I said, I've got the vampire piece on him. So you're just going to focus on enlightenment and attack. You don't really care about crit. All his damage comes from the passive, and that is derivative damage. So yeah, just focus on getting this set together, or, you know, with mythics that increase his enlightenment and his attack. Finally, Vikanya as one of our other DPS. She's also the same. She's a derivative damage dealer. You're going to go Queen's Fan if you've got it and get as much attack and enlightenment, not prioritizing crit at all. And we do not want any accuracy on her because, I mean, I guess it's fine, but it's a stat that is taking up, like, you know, it's taking up slots that we don't need to be taking up. So we already have someone applying all our poisons here with Twitch. So let him have the accuracy, give him all the accuracy. He will be all we need to get 40 poisons up on the boss. And so it's a waste of stats to try and go for extra accuracy and get more poisons because we don't need them. We're going to be at 40 the entire fight. So I decided not to get accuracy on her. I don't care about her landing poisons. I just want her to do more damage with the ultimate. And so we're going all in on enlightenment and attack. And then finally, with Corrin, again, we do not want accuracy. If you can avoid getting accuracy, that would be best, because we're not going to build him with a lot of enlightenment. So his poisons are going to be a lot weaker than Twitch's poisons. We don't want his poisons being put up on the boss, because if he extends his own poisons the entire fight, well, they're going to tick for a tiny amount of damage. So basically, the goal is for Twitch to apply all 40 and for us to keep those 40 up the entire fight. So try to avoid accuracy. Of course, if you're going to be using Hourglass, you're going to get some. You can't avoid that. And then we're using him as our turn booster. So the interesting thing with him is he can extend poisons by their full duration, which is 15 seconds. And this set will allow him to pretty much ult every 15 seconds if you pair it with a little bit of skill haste on the runes and with the Hourglass. So it's a really good set to be using on him, since we're going to be timing him to go every 15 seconds anyway. So he's going to be our turn booster, and we're going to prioritize basically just damage stats if you can get it, but he really doesn't do any damage, so don't worry about it too much. The most important thing being just the skill haste. We want skill haste on both the runes, and we're going to be using the Hourglass so that he can ult every 15 seconds. And yeah, the timings here are basically, we have Twitch, sorry, no, not Twitch. We have Vikanya going first because her ult applies a mark on the boss that after which, if poisons are applied, will do derivative damage. So she needs to go first, and then Twitch is doing those poisons after her, and also applying the Witch's Remains artifact at 12.7. And then finally, once that defense penalty is up and the poisons are up, we finish off with Lothair doing his ultimate, doing majority of the damage this team does. I timed Corrin like this because at 20 seconds is after Twitch has applied his second battle skill, and that's the point in which we have probably the most poisons in the first round. So I want to make sure he gets a max value poison extension ult to extend 30 poisons ideally. And so I went at 20.1 for the first, and then we're just having him repeat every 15 seconds to keep those poisons active throughout the entire fight. So we're going to keep 30 poisons up all the time, and all we have to do is build up the last 10 with the battle skill and the ultimate with Twitch, which he has no problem doing. So you should be ulting with this team on 20 or on 40 poisons with the Lothair every single turn. So that is not an issue. And now I guess I'll go over the talents. So again, for the talents on the exclusive, we're going for his special talent. This ended up performing the best. It's more damage on the ultimate. On Twitch, like I said, because all his damage is poison, the top side makes the most sense. It's a lot more damage for his poisons. Vikanya is kind of the same. Although she's not applying poisons, this top side at least has this, which is going to increase her damage by 10%. And unfortunately, these bottom two are really not great at all. So yeah, you just go top. We're doing the same thing with the Dauntless, going top side to keep our team alive, and then Corrin is also going top side because we might as well get 10% more damage here since we're not applying any poisons, and these other two are just, honestly, they're terrible. So yeah, don't worry about these other two. Always go top side on your DPS. These in testing were both pretty bad. So unfortunately, I'm not a huge fan of the talent system for poison. It really only benefits people applying poisons, and in this team we only have one person doing that, so unfortunately a lot of these end up being wasted, but at least here we got 10% more damage, and that's all we're really benefiting from here on these. So honestly, if you didn't want to get these last talents, you don't really need them on Vikanya or Corrin. As long as you have this first one, Warheart, you're pretty much getting the maximum value out of them. Whereas with Twitch, I would say you really need these. This is going to increase the poison damage he does significantly. All right, so that's the setup for the gear and the talents, and then I've already done the timing, so yeah, that's it. Moving on to the next team, which is going to be summons. All right, so finally we'll go over summons. I think I'm going to skip rally. I haven't seen any evidence of anyone using these teams on any of the servers I'm on, so I think most people are just not using this, or not planning on using this on Vortex as a Vortex team when everyone's gotten so many summon units from the start of the season. So I would say I'm just going to skip that, and we're going to finish off here with summons as our last, viable Vortex team that you're going to want to make. So, starting off, we'll go over Lawannis. So Lawannis, the way she works is after she transforms into her true dragon form at the end, she actually ends up doing a lot more damage on her battle skill and not the ultimate. And that battle skill does a lot of hits. It does like 40 hits or something. And so she's going to be really good here with the Gambler set, allowing her to deal a lot of extra Gambler procs with that battle skill. And so the Gambler set is quite good on her. That's why I went for it. Eventually, you'll get probably a full Mythic setup. But for now, with I've tested all these teams with no Mythic gear to try and keep it fair. We're not doing any Mythics. And this is a item you should have got in the campaign, which is very good on her to increase her damage. It's a good amount of extra crit and attack. So very nice to use that. And then we're just, prioritizing attack, crit rate, crit damage. I got her to about 85% crit here, and then also some crit damage, good amount of crit damage. And then, yeah, we're using the exclusive artifacts. So pretty straightforward build here for her. And let's move on to then Centralia. Centralia is very important. She's going to increase the damage your Lawanus does by quite a bit by not only boosting her stacks, but also giving her extra attack. Lawanus, once he transforms into a dragon, is counted as a summon, and so this passive here that increases her attack and gives her attack up is going to affect Lawanus, as well as this battle skill which says while this Banshee's Curse is active, summons do 20% increased damage. I think that debuff also affects Lawanus's damage when she turns into a dragon, so this is also going to boost Lawanus damage quite a bit. So Centralia is actually providing a lot. Although her damage is basically nothing, she's making our Lawanus perform a lot better. So very important unit to have if you're going to use a summon team. And the way that we build her is because of that passive giving attack per percentage of her attack. We're basically double dipping here with the pipe organ to give even more attack. And that's why we're stacking attack on every piece of gear we can possibly do it on. So attack percentage gloves, attack percentage body armor. And we're using her as well as the turn booster on the team, since she doesn't really do any damage and we can afford to use this set that doesn't really provide any extra damage. So we're having that puppeteer set on her and just stacking a ton of attack with the pipe organ. Moving on to Premsa. Premsa is our second best DPS behind Lawanus. She does pretty good. The way I've built her is basically an enlightenment build. I think this is more damage than building her crit if you're going to do single target damage. So for Vortex, you want to go like Queen's Fan, a bunch of enlightenment and attack gear, basically building her similar to the way you would build like Flora or Avelios, for example. So enlightenment is the main stat to prioritize, and then after that it's attack. I didn't really go for a lot of crit, although crit is not terrible on her. It's not as much of a priority. And then moving on, we've got Faloja kind of trying to do the same thing that Dauntless is doing to keep us alive for the full 10 minutes. She's providing a lot of shields and damage reduction, and then that pairs really well with the Aurelian Vest. And she is actually, she is our tank as well for this fight. We have her in the Ancestral Protection set, and she's going to be our tank, tanking the Call of Lightning. And again, we have this Mythic allowing her to cleanse when she shields, so that's going to help deal with those defense penalties. And then, yeah, just prioritizing enlightenment and defense. And if you need a little bit of HP, you might need that to make her the tank. And yeah, that's pretty straightforward. And then finally, Urzilis here. He's applying our Witch's Remains as well as buffing up our summons, which includes Lawanus, like I said, when she turns into a dragon. So that's going to be buffing her damage. And since he's applying the Witch's Remains, it makes sense for him to also be using this set and buffing our damage for the next 10 seconds at the same time. So we're using the 3-ear set on him. And again, with all of these guys to help them stay alive with Faloja for the full 10 minutes, I am using a, what is this called? Lifesteal Mythic on all of them, and that's going to help with the healing, because Faloja does no healing, so they need some way to get some healing. Because while the shields are active, they'll be healing underneath those shields to get back to full HP. And then besides that, we are just building accuracy and just the normal damage stats on him that you would, crit rate, attack percentage. Unfortunately, I don't think I had any crit gloves for this mythic, so I just used the attack percent, but probably want to build him with crit. And yeah, accuracy, crit rate, crit damage, attack percentage, basic DPS stuff. All right, so for the timings here on the summon team, we have basically our defense down applier going first at 12.4 here with Urzilis, followed by Premsa going about a second later. The reason why we give him a bit of a cushion here is because there's going to be a point at which Centralia stops ulting for a second when there's still one of the Phoenixes out on the field. And so she's not going to turn boost that round. So if there's any disparity here in their skill haste, we want to make sure that we got a bit of breathing room here, so we make sure that Premsa is ulting after Urzilis. So that's why I have her about a second later. Should be enough of a cushion there. And then about 8 seconds after Urzilis's ult, we want Lawannis to ult, giving the summons some time to do damage before she is going to consume them. If you don't care about that summon damage, honestly, it might not be that significant. You could also just have her ult around the same time as Premsa, but I think you would at least want to time her 5 seconds after Premsa, because Premsa is going to trigger her passive, which does damage over 5 seconds. So at the very least, if you're going to have Lawannis go as soon as possible, it has to be, or it should be, 5 seconds after Premsa, so that you give Premsa time to do damage with that passive. And then Centralia here, which is turn boosting us and also providing those stacks to Lawannis. We're just going to leave her on default. We just want her ulting as much as possible to buff Lawannis as fast as possible, so we're not going to slow her down at all. She might be able to ult faster than 18 seconds, especially with that turn boosting set. So we're going to let her on auto. And then Faloja is again at 21.5 every 20, like Nathaniel was. And that's going to keep us alive, because it's going to give us that 30% damage reduction and shields during 3 of the boss's abilities, and that's the best timing to cover all 3 of those. So yeah, those are the timings. And now I guess I'll go over the talents. So the talents here, for at least, let's go over Lawannis first. The talents for Lawannis, for some reason, people were telling me, and I did some testing with this, but apparently the bottom one was better, and it performed better, because this gives her increased damage, whereas this top one, all it really does is speed up at the rate at which she gains stacks, so that she ramps up quicker. But with Centralia on the team, we ramp up so fast that it doesn't make a big difference to have this top side talent. So we don't really need this to ramp up. We're going to hit 70 stacks pretty quickly, and then we want the increased damage from these ones down here at the bottom. So yeah, so damage increased by 3% for each summon unit present up to 24%. That's more damage. This one also, the damage dealt by the ultimate skill increased by 10%, and then for each summon unit another 2%. So it adds up. And then moving on to Premsa, we're using the exact same thing. Bottom side is really good for more damage. With Urzilis, again, bottom side, more damage. And then Centralia, again, bottom side, more damage. But really the important part here is that I think when she uses her ultimate on Lawannis, she's counting Lawannis as her summon, maybe. I think that might be how it works. And so this is going to give Lawannis even more stats. So we're just stacking stats onto Lawannis to get her to do more damage. So that's why this bottom side here with the mana feeding is pretty good. And then for Faloja, I had the best results with middle just because this team has no healing. And so we need some source of healing for her. And instead of using I guess I could have used the Lifesteal Mythic, but in fact I don't have room for it because I'm already using a set bonus plus the Cleansing Mythic. So instead of a Lifesteal Mythic, I had to find a way to heal, and this solves that problem. She'll be able to heal by 5% of her max HP every time a buff is refreshed, or you lose or refresh a buff. And since she does so many buffs, and you got all kinds of buffs on the team with like the summon buffs, this is going to happen quite often. So yeah, this will help heal her and keep her alive. And yeah, that's the team. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope this helps you guys out on your Vortex rankings. And if you want to support me, you can, of course, sub or subscribe to my YouTube, or catch me over on Twitch. I stream Dragonheir over there most days. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.